It says, did Daniel see in the vision what was really happening in our time, or just analogies like OT's mentioned here? I ask because at the end says he was sick for days. In verse 26, when he says hide the vision, means it could be hidden until these days, or that people wouldn't be able to discern it, or did he really need to hide it? No, he didn't need to hide it physically. What it meant, it was that even if they read it, they couldn't understand it until the time when it would be fulfilled. So I'm sure during the time of the Maccabees, they saw part of the fulfillment, and they said this is the whole fulfillment, because that was their time, and many died in that time, and there was a fulfillment in that time. But the greatest or ultimate fulfillment of that prophecy is in our time, so it can be understood even better in our time, because we even have an example in the time of the Maccabees. So the way that Yahweh does things is amazing, and the fact that Daniel was told to hide the vision, to seal the vision, is the fact that it wouldn't be able to be understood by the people of the time before the moment in which it would be fulfilled. And he was seeing, like he said it, he was seeing animals. He was seeing pretty much a representation of all of that with certain creatures. So he saw a vision, like in a dream. When he woke up, the whole dream was explained to him. Even within the dream, he heard the voice of a man, Gabriel,